There are two other functions on the Vertex that are important, but they're somewhat hidden, so I want to make sure I cover those. We actually go to login screen to access both of those, and the first one is lesson mode. Lesson mode is a preset lessons that were installed to help an instructor give a student a set of lessons to go through that you may want to have them have to pass before they start the lesson or the program. It actually not only teaches a skill, but also teaches some knowledge, and that's what I like about it. So if I go into the lesson mode, first of all, I can do things like workplace inspection, where I can have the student actually look at a workplace and have to choose where the different safety violations are and correct those safety violations before they can move on. They can do things like WPS reading if you want your student to learn how to read a WPS. There's actually a lesson in here on having them go through and learn how to do that WPS. I can do basic stick welding. Some of the other things like tape reading. We find out that some students have a hard time understanding how to read a tape measure, and so we put a basic lesson in here where we actually put a thickness, and they have to actually read the tape measure and take a test on how to read the tape measure. So when you go through these preset lessons, it helps an instructor give a series of lessons for the students they have to go through, learning both the knowledge and the skill to go with it to help streamline them and pick up their speed of learning. Then I'm going to go back out of here, back to my free weld. And the other function is called the Weldometer. The Weldometer is something that's put on the instructor screen. The instructor screen is a function that we put into the machine that is hidden from the students. The instructor has access, the students do not. And when the instructor comes into the screen, they have some different things they can look at. And the first, the Weldometer that I mentioned. The Weldometer keeps track of all the materials that the virtual reality saved on. And so one of the good things on return on investment on a virtual reality is how much material you're saving. Not only the coupons, but also things like the gas and the consumables that you're using. So this records those. And so you can come in, there's an overview, but I can look at the mild steel, touch on it, and actually breaks down every mild steel coupon and tells me how many that you used in virtual reality. So we can see down here on 3/8 plate, we use 498 3/8 plates in the mild steel. But I can do the same on aluminum and stainless to help you start putting some numbers to what you're saving. Then I can also look at the gas, and I can actually see how many cubic feet of gas I'm using in different gas mixtures, whether it's an argon CO2 mix or even pure argon for TIG welding. Besides the Weldometer, I have an important screen called tolerances. Tolerances are how easy or difficult that we score a student that we saw on the laser screen. And if you give a very tough tolerance to a new student, they may feel defeated before they start. And so we, first of all, have a default tolerance in here that comes from the factory. But you can come in here and select entry level, which is a very simple or wider tolerance to make the student feel more comfortable. But as they get a little better, we can start tightening those up. Now we have intermediate tolerances, then we can go to advanced. Select advanced tolerance, and now when that student welds, the laser screen and all the tolerances tighten up, and the student has to do a lot better job to get a good score. The reason that's helpful is when you have the student go from virtual reality welding to regular welding, you want to make sure that skill transfers. And by tightening those tolerances up, it gives you better assurance that when they go to the shop floor, they've got all their positions and hand movements correct, so they're able to make a good weld when they go to the shop floor. Besides tolerances, we have things called scoring modules, because when we score to discontinuities, when we look at those, we have maybe D1.1, which is the bridge structural code, and we may have ASME, which is another code. And so you can choose those tolerances. We may update your virtual reality in the future, and so when you go to the update mode, we can send you an update package that you now go to this mode and update your machine. Then I have an options mode. An option is the settings. such as the sound levels. We have the sound on the interface when I'm hitting the buttons and the sound level when I'm welding. And you can independently make them either louder or softer, depending upon what's comfortable for you. And then we have a sensor setting. If you have two virtual realities close together, we can give you alternate frequencies to make sure that they're not interfering with each other, and that's what we do with this setting. Then we just go back. We're back into the free weld, and we're ready to log in. So it's important to understand those two screens. One is to give your students preset lessons to make it easier on you to be able to get a person up and familiar with virtual reality welding. And the other is to be able to go into that instructor screen, look at your savings, set your tolerances, and do your upgrades that you may need. So understanding those two screens will help you fully utilize the Vertex 360 in your education and training.